This is the long short stitch. I sometimes mess it up and call it the short long stitch, but it's the same stitch, so don't let me get you confused. This is another solid fill stitch like the satin stitch, and it's based off the satin stitch. But with the long short, you can make much larger areas of a satiny kind of stitch because you're doing sort of long and then shorter stitches and then doing another row and another row. So it's based on kind of rows as well as vertical panels. Okay, so I want to show you a really beautiful version of the long short stitch, again out of our one of our flower books. This petal, just get it down where I can show you more easily. It's a white on white, so it's a little hard to see, but you've got varying stitches that length, and then you're coming back and doing more stitches this length and more stitches this length. And these are actually 2 or 3 different colors of flosses, very, very subtly faded. So that is one version of the long short stitch. You can do really, really beautiful fades with it. Here's a sampler that I did a while back that we sell on our website. It's the intermediate beginning embroidery by Kiriki Press. And here's another long short version in a fade. So started up here with the darks, and then it's actually got 4 colors, and then a medium blue, and a darker medium blue, a lighter medium blue, and a light blue. So it just does a beautiful, beautiful fade, if you can see that. Okay, so I'll show you how to do it. We'll do a mini fade here. And if you've watched my satin stitch video, then this will look a little bit familiar to you. I've again put in vertical guidelines because I'm just going to be doing a square, and the vertical guides help me a lot, and I think they'll help you as a beginner. So this is how I would start if you were just learning how to do it. Make a little square and divide it up into vertical lines, and then we will just put in those. Oh, we're just going to go halfway because it's the long short. So you're going to vary these guidelines. They're not going to be, none of your lines are going to be they're not going to be exactly the same length, and they're not going to go in any sort of order. So you just are randomly, they'll be in an order going across, but not in an order of the long short. So you'll just randomly vary the long shortness of these. And then maybe we'll make this one a little bit longer. And then you just start filling in and going across and doing just randomly long short. I'm using 4 threads in my floss, mainly because I don't want to, it'll take longer if I used less, and we'd be here a lot longer doing this. So that's my reason for doing it. I would probably tend to do it in less flosses because I like the more delicate look, but it's totally up to you and up to the pattern. Now, if you're doing a little delicate flower of some sort, then you might want to use less floss. But here, we'll use more. Now, this is a trick that I have. I kind of just draw a visual line with the thread and then sort of squish it over a tiny bit and put the needle down where it was. That way I can stay straight, because I do have trouble keeping the straight lines. I tend to veer off in the right hand direction, but it helps me if I pull it down first and eyeball it and see if it's the length that I want, or where I want it to be, and then I just scooch it over just a tiny bit and then put my needle down under it, and it keeps them pretty straight. So you see I've got a lot of different shortnesses and lengths going here. The other thing is you don't want to pull this too tight, because when you take the hoop off, it can start to pucker, and you don't want that. I mean, you can try to kind of steam it out, but some of the puckering just won't go away unless it's in the hoop, because the hoop does keep it tauter. So just be cognizant of the fact that it's going to pucker up if you're not careful. And again, like I've mentioned, if you watch the satin stitch, I'll make this one pretty short. You don't want to have any white space in terms of the closeness of the stitches. So you have to keep these stitches fairly close together. And you'll just learn. Now that one is a little short. It should come up a little higher on top, but I'm not going to take it out. I would take it out, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to take your time to rethread my needle, because that would not be pleasant. The other thing about both this stitch and the satin stitches, they're really floss hogs, because you're coming from the top. Just want to make sure I get that close enough so there's no white space. And coming from the top and going down, and then you're going around the back side and back up to the top. So it's running kind of the same look on the back. It's not as tidy looking, but therefore it's just it eats a lot of floss. So just be sure you have a lot of floss on hand and prepare for that when you're buying your supplies. If you're going to be doing satin stitch, you're going to need a lot more floss. That's a really cool, beautiful stitch. There's another version of the long short stitch that I did on, if you go to our website under workshops, and then you'll see a header for videos. Under videos, there's something called interpretive embroidery, which actually is for a kit that you can buy. But there are two samplers in there, sampler 1 and sampler 2. And there are links to them, so it's really, once you click on interpretive embroidery, go to sampler 2, and in the middle row, which is the second row down, on the far right-hand side, there's a little landscape that I've embroidered. And it has long, short stitches in it in 2 places. But they're very, very loose and sketchy looking, and so it gives you an idea that you can be loose with this, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. So check that out sometime. All right, so now we're going to switch colors, and luckily I have another needle loaded up, so you don't have to wait for me to thread it. And we're just going to go back now and repeat exactly what we did before. But the difference is when you come up, I want you to split the stitch each time instead of going right up next to it. Because if you go up next to it, sometimes I mean, you can do that, but I think it looks cleaner and more natural if you split it. So you can decide. You can go into the same hole as right there. But if you go up just a tiny, tiny bit and split that stitch, it just makes a really nice, more kind of naturalistic looking long short. So either way, you can practice it both ways and see what you like. I drew these lines so lightly I don't even see. I think there's just one right here. So I'm splitting the stitch with my needle and then coming straight down. Then I'm splitting the stitch with my needle. And coming straight down. And then splitting this stitch. It doesn't matter if you split it exactly, 2 threads on either side, but you can try for that. And then come straight down. And then we're just going to fill in by going up into the middle of the stitch up there. Come down. And I'm starting to go to the left accidentally. Try to get that evened out down here. So this is used a lot also in floral embroidery, as I just showed you. And any place where you have a solid area you want to fill, you can do it just all in one color, or you can do fade, or you can just be just so subtle that you, in the 2 different colors that you use, that you can hardly see the difference in the colors. All kind of your interpretation of it. And that's kind of what I love about this stitch. It's just, you can really make it your own. I can see that, I don't know whether you can see it, there's a little, there's a little extra space there. Oh, no, it's just because there's a stitch all the way at the top. I was going to say you can throw in an extra stitch if you need to along the way, if you've got sort of too much of a space. Actually, I had a stitch there, it was just kind of covered up. But I will create, on purpose, a little bit of a white space right here and show you what I'm talking about. There's too much space. So I'm just going to go back up in there somewhere and come back down and fill it, even though it wasn't going into a fresh stitch. You can be kind of a little bit looser with this. These colors are fairly, because these are hand-dyed flosses, and there's a little bit of natural variegation in them. So that's another thing that I think looks really, really pretty, because they just sort of flow more naturally. There's not a harsh break between the 2 colors. And we sell a lot of hand-dyed floss on our website. So it is sort of is naturally very, very slightly variegated. And when you see it in long lanes like this, it just looks so beautiful. So I'd encourage you to give the hand-dyed floss a try. Just a few more here. I don't know if you can hear the crows in the background, but I don't know what it is about them. I mean, they all live around here, and sometimes it's just so quiet, and other days, like today, this one crow has just been going constantly. And I don't know what he's squawking about or who he's squawking to, but maybe you can't hear it, but I can. It's just so funny. All right, so there's the long and short. And I just think that looks so pretty. So have fun with it.